Do you know the rules of the Salt Witch? It's that old story, usually dismissed as mere superstition. You don't? Then, in a way, you're lucky. Because now you'll hear this story, and you'll know the rules. And once you know them, you can never forget. My name is Marcus Fisher. I've spent over 30 years in this small coastal town, a place left behind by time, where fear and superstition hold far more sway than logic and science. For a long time, I thought this town was just boring, with nothing to do but listen to old sailors spin tall tales. Even into my 30s, working as a fisherman, I was subjected to exaggerated exploits daily. I'd learned, though, to keep my opinions to myself. The Salt, which was one of the local myths, a powerful being who made deals with people. Depending on the wish, you could return richer than a king or lose your life or limbs in the blink of an eye. You absolutely did not want to anger the Salt Witch. But then, something happened that changed everything. My mother fell ill, and I found myself searching for this legendary being. Most of the time, she was just like the town's boogeyman, a story to scare children into behaving. But when fishing repeatedly failed, or a particularly harsh winter descended, people genuinely began to worry about the witch. Consequently, rafts would be sent out to sea to appease her. I'd watched those rafts leave the harbor for 6 consecutive years, rafts filled with flower garlands and offerings, pushed out by stubborn sailors who refused to admit it was futile. Even things we should have held on to more dearly went with them. I always thought it was ridiculous, until my mother got sick. That's when I understood. Sometimes, you just need to believe in something, and desperation can lead you to unimaginable places. They said only fools or those with nothing left to lose would seek out the Salt Witch. Without money for a doctor, and witnessing my mother's constant terror and strange fits, desperation pushed me into the second category. I chased every story about her, from common fishermen's tales to increasingly obscure rumors. I walked the docks and ventured far beyond the town's outskirts. For a while, that was all I did. Whenever I wasn't nursing my mother, I was wandering along the coast in my small boat, barely working, hardly sleeping. It felt like I'd been doing it forever. Just as I was about to give up, I finally saw something moving across the bay, and I realized there were others, just like me, captivated by the unfathomable depths of this bay, searching for something. When I returned to shore, the first thing I noticed was a cluster of children. There were over a dozen of them, ranging in age from infants just a few months old to teenagers, picking up seashells and running around. Their laughter filled the air, competing with the cries of the seagulls. One particularly curious toddler wobbled towards me, observing me. "Don't run so fast," I said.
Sorry.
He replied. It was strange to see children of such varying ages together. They were too far apart in age to be siblings, and it didn't look like an organized gathering such as a school. At the water's edge, where the waves met the sand, stood a figure in pure white. Lucy was a young woman with delicate features, pale-skinned, with hair that cascaded down to her waist in waves. She was as pale as if she'd been made from the sea foam covering her feet. I'd never seen an albino person, but the condition was rare, and her thin cotton dress in the early morning light made her appear almost ghostly. But what struck me most were her eyes. They were as deep as the ocean, as if they held centuries of secrets. I don't remember what I was thinking then. I hadn't slept for over a week, and honestly, I could barely stand on my own 2 feet. I had no capacity to pay attention to whether some superhuman force was at play or if this was a test to see if I was worthy. The moment I saw her, the first thing I did was whisper, "Help me," and pass out at her feet, almost crushing the toddler. When I woke up, I was lying on a couch beneath a thick blanket. The scent of flowers and food reached my nose, feeling warm and comforting. That lasted for 2 seconds until my mind registered that I had no idea where I was. It was a very large house, and through the window, I could see their own orchard in the backyard. The foundation was made of stone and brick, unlike the wooden architectural style I was used to seeing in town. It was as if the building had been transported from another era, another place. I walked around a bit, heading to what seemed like the front door. The building was perched atop a reef, just far enough from the cliff edge and at an angle that made it invisible from below, with a path leading up to it. However, standing in the doorway and looking down, I could see the entire town spread out at my feet. Distant noises and murmurs reached us like whispers in the wind. Only the bell tower was clearly audible from there, its grand bell echoing skyward. It was 8 a.m. A gust of wind and a wave of dizziness struck me, and I quickly returned to the couch. Despite its location atop the reef overlooking the town, the house felt strangely elevated, as if disconnected from reality. It was like stumbling into another world above the clouds. Children were everywhere, eating breakfast, studying, and going about their morning routines. They didn't react much to my presence, accepting my being there as if it were natural, or perhaps as if I weren't there at all to begin with. On closer inspection, there was a strange harmony among them. The older children naturally looked after the younger ones, and everyone seemed to understand their role. Yet, in their eyes, there was a depth beyond their years, as if they were looking into a distant world. Looking closely, there was a strange harmony among them. Older children naturally took care of younger ones, and everyone seemed to understand their role. One boy read aloud from a book, and the other children listened quietly. When a baby started crying, a nearby girl immediately picked him up and comforted him. Just as I began to consider exploring the second floor of the house, the pale girl I had seen on the beach arrived with a tray of food. It was an assortment of fruits, jam, yogurt, and freshly baked bread. I took it as a signal to stay. She placed the tray before me and waited for me to take a few bites before asking,
"What happened?"
Her voice was as soft as the ocean waves, and she spoke to the children with a maternal warmth. Yet, beneath that gentleness, I felt an unmeasurable depth. My mother was kicked out of her home in her late teens. I don't know if I was the reason she was kicked out, or if I was born as a result of an unfortunate encounter in a dark alley. The fact is, I was born, and we had only each other. She raised me alone until I was old enough to work. I found that it was easier for men to find work, and I did well enough that she could retire without starving. But even with that, we barely made ends meet. So when she got sick and her usual home remedies weren't working, there wasn't much we could do. We didn't have money for a doctor. It was either wait for her to die or go see the Salt Witch. So here I was. Lucy listened quietly, but when I finished speaking, she stared out the window for a while.
"The people of this town, they tell many stories about me, don't they?"
She said. Yes, I admitted. Terrible stories.
"Indeed. But there is an old rule. There is always a reason for the stories that are told. I'm not a witch,
She sighed.
but I'll see what I can do."
Ideally, if someone was sick, they should bring the patient along so she could examine them directly. But my mother was bedridden, so there was no help for it. She couldn't come down to town with me either, because the townspeople hated her. Instead, she asked about my mother's symptoms. How high was her fever? Was there an obvious infection? Did she cough? And if so, was it a dry or wet cough? How well did she sleep? I explained as thoroughly as I could, and Lucy headed to the kitchen. I saw her sorting through bundles of herbs and empty bottles, clearing a space on the counter. But then she remembered to close the door. I slowly exhaled, relaxing my shoulders as I waited. But deep down, a small voice whispered, if she really was just an ordinary woman, why did she live in a place like this? Why were there so many children, and why were they so obedient? The myth of the salt, which existed long before I was born. But Lucy's unusual appearance wouldn't be the only reason the story had been passed down through generations. It wasn't hard to imagine that the rumors began when someone from her lineage first moved in, perhaps a grandmother or another older relative. And that's when, buried deep beneath layers of skepticism and denial, I realized I was afraid. People told many terrifying stories about her. Some said she was capricious and cruel, manipulating tides and controlling the weather, while others claimed she was older than death itself, cold as the bottom of the deep sea. It was whispered that if you angered her, you'd turn to salt in an instant. I had prayed and sought her out, ready to die, waiting for the town bell to announce my demise in the morning. But she was just a woman who looked a little different from everyone else where she lived, and they had chosen her as the target of their rumors. I wanted to strangle them. She returned from the kitchen with a flask and offered it to me. How do I use it?
A small amount, just 1 drop, every morning. No more than that. It's quite potent.
She hesitated slightly as she handed over the medicine.
But promise me one thing. When you speak of me, be careful. This town has old rules.
I turned the flask over, examining it closely. It was about the size of a cough syrup bottle you'd see at a pharmacy, but there was no label. The liquid swirled inside, leaving a brownish-black coating on the transparent glass walls. The smell immediately hit me, sharp and almost metallic, with a faint hint of charcoal in the background. I had to close the lid as soon as I opened it. It looked incredibly unappetizing.
I can't fix the taste.
She stated quietly, her eyes fixed on me as I examined the medicine.
But you can take it with water or mix it with food.
I nodded, still a little disoriented by the smell. What can I offer you in return? She turned around and thought for a moment.
Could you come and help take care of my siblings until your mother gets better?
More than anything, she wanted me to babysit. I was speechless for a moment, then exhaled the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I can't believe people make up such things.
But
Her expression clouded slightly.
if everyone who met you died, there would be no more visitors, would there?
That's not good.
Yes,
She agreed.
but sometimes fear is there to protect people.
Before I left, I turned back to see Lucy standing by the window, gazing out at the sea. In that moment, behind her gentle smile, I felt something deep and ancient hidden. That was the first glimpse I had of the Salt Witch's true rules. Have you ever lived a life where you wake up at the same time every day? At the moment the 8 AM bell tower chimes, I opened my eyes as if I were a trained animal. It was time to give my mother her medicine, just 1 drop of that clear liquid. My mother's condition had steadily improved. This was the 3rd month since the treatment began, and the 3rd month I had been caring for the children at her house. During that time, my mother's condition had definitely improved. I felt that the price of that medicine was paying off. Color returned to her cheeks, and her coughing fits clearly diminished. At first, the relationship had begun with fear. The rumors of the Salt Witch and something deep and ancient hidden behind the smile at her window. But as I spent every day at her house, I gradually became drawn to Lucy's kindness, her love for the children, and the deep wisdom she occasionally displayed.
Marcus,
My mother held my hand.
you must properly thank that woman.
I nodded, but my feelings for Lucy now transcended simple gratitude. As I spent every day at her house, I gradually became captivated by her charm. Daily life at Lucy's house had a peculiar rhythm. The dozen or so children were all of different ages, from infants to teenagers, as if gathered from across different eras. It must be hard taking care of them, I asked Lucy, and she smiled.
You get used to it. It becomes natural.
The children grew fond of me. Emma, a girl of about 8, always wanted to sit on my lap and have me read to her. Tom, a 14-year-old boy, eagerly asked me about fishing. However, sometimes I noticed something strange. All the children called Lucy Mom, but not a single one resembled her. Their hair color, eye color, and build were all completely different. And what was most inexplicable was the disproportionate depth in their eyes, or perhaps a fleeting quality as if they were looking into a distant world. Are they all adopted? I asked directly. Lucy gazed out the window. The townscape visible from the reef was bathed in golden light in the afternoon sun.
Isn't blood relation the only way to become a family?
A strange chill ran down my spine at that answer. However, my unease faded in the beauty of Lucy's flowing hair, rustling in the wind. It was during the 3rd week of the treatment. At dusk, after all the children had gone to sleep, Lucy and I were alone in the orchard.
Marcus.
She called my name. Her voice resonated beautifully, like wind chimes. Yes.
You're a kind person. Devoted to your mother and kind to the children.
She moved closer to me. Her pale skin seemed to glow under the moonlight. My heart pounded fiercely. Lucy. At that moment, she kissed me. The touch of her lips was both cold and warm. I was completely captivated by her. I love you too, I whispered. But at that time, intoxicated by love, I ignored the warnings around me. The murmuring sound I heard from the direction of the town, and the 12 shadows staring intently at us from the children's window. Unaware of all this, I was simply immersed in my happiness with Lucy. After our relationship began, my standing in town rapidly deteriorated. The first thing I noticed was the cold stare from Jim, a fellow fisherman.
Marcus, I hear you've been visiting that reef often lately.
He said with clear apprehension. For work, I replied vaguely.
Work?
Jim scoffed.
Babysitting that witch's children? I've heard that woman hasn't changed her appearance since our grandfather's time. Explain it to me. Why doesn't she age?
A week later, Father Brown visited my house.
Marcus, I need to speak with you.
Father Brown's expression was stern.
Break off your relationship with that woman for the peace of the town.
On what grounds?
The same thing happened 50 years ago. A young man was enchanted by her, and in the end,
The priest trailed off.
you'll see by her actions. She is a servant of the devil.
And the decisive blow was the blatant ostracism at the market. Merchants conspicuously hid their goods when I approached, spitting, "We have nothing to sell to the devil's minion." I was completely isolated. 3 months into the treatment, our relationship was in its happiest phase. My mother's health had fully recovered, and I was seriously considering a future with Lucy. "Marry me," I proposed to her in the orchard. Lucy smiled, but there was a faint shadow in her expression.
Marcus, you are truly a kind person.
But
I have a destiny I must carry. This house, these children, and the fate of losing those I love.
she gazed into the distance.
But just for tonight, let me forget that destiny.
That night, we were together for the first time. Lucy's skin was as beautiful as moonlight, feeling both cold and warm. I became completely hers. But happiness did not last long. The next morning, an event occurred that would change my life forever. Waking to the 8 bell tower chime, I returned home as usual to give my mother her medicine. But the moment I entered her room, my world collapsed. My mother was cold. "Mom," I embraced her body. How could my mother, who was fine just last night, suddenly? Mrs. Wilson, a neighbor, rushed in, followed by other townspeople, and in their faces, I saw something terrible.
It's the witch's curse, after all. The price for dealing with that woman. The same thing that happened 50 years ago is happening again.
I was confused. And then I realized, last night, the night I was with Lucy, I had forgotten to give my mother her medicine. Guilt threatened to crush me. The priest's sermon was clearly aimed at me.
He who is enchanted by evil will have his loved ones taken away. This is God's will and a warning against sinful deeds.
After the funeral, I headed to Lucy's house. I wanted to tell her everything and share my grief, but Lucy's reaction was unexpected.
Your mother's suffering is over.
What?
The medicine was indeed working, but Marcus, your mother's illness was incurable. All I could do was alleviate her pain, and
She took my hand.
I wanted to spend as much time with you as possible.
But if I hadn't forgotten the medicine?
Fate cannot be changed.
Lucy's voice held deep sadness.
But you devoted yourself to your mother more than enough.
I tried to find solace in her words, but something nagged at me deep down. Why did she know so much about fate? That night, I noticed the children's puzzling behavior. For some reason, about 4 of the 12 children who should have been there were not present. The remaining children also seemed somewhat translucent. Lucy, the children.
Marcus,
She smiled sadly.
it seems it's time to tell you the truth. The medicine that keeps them materially manifest is slowly weakening.
We went out to the orchard. Under the moonlight, Lucy began to tell the story of 50 years ago.
I was born and raised here, a normal human. But one day, when I lost those I loved, I refused to die. I didn't want to forget them, so I sealed them away in my memories.
The children are.
They are the memories of the people I loved, lovers, friends, family. Everyone I lost. And as time passed, I underwent physical changes, becoming something other than a normal human, as if I were forbidden to live or die.
I trembled. So they were. Memories bound to this world, beings she kept in the space between life and death. Then, me too.
You're different, Marcus.
Lucy placed her hand on my cheek.
You loved me. Truly loved me. That's why.
Tears streamed from her eyes.
That's why I must let you go.
The next day, the town's animosity reached its peak. When I overheard the conversation of drunken men at the tavern, my blood ran cold.
Tonight's the night. We'll drive that woman out of town. Burn down the house on the reef. We'll do tonight what we should have done 50 years ago.
I rushed to Lucy's house. I had to warn her, but when I arrived home, Lucy already understood the situation.
I expected this.
She said with surprising calm, "The children?"
They're safe now.
Lucy smiled.
They're fine. Don't worry.
I looked around the house. Indeed, the children were gone. Only the sound of the wind could be heard. "Lucy, let's run away together."
I won't run.
Her expression held resignation and a longing for release.
This is my destiny, Marcus. The end I've waited 50 years for.
At that moment, torchlight and angry shouts approached from outside the house. As the mob surrounded the house, Lucy told the final truth.
Marcus, about your mother's medicine.
As the door was violently pounded, she took my hand.
The medicine was indeed working. But Marcus, your mother's illness was fundamentally incurable. All I could do was alleviate her pain and allow her to live out her time peacefully. And
She took my hand.
I gave you the medicine every day because I wanted to see you daily, even for a little longer. That was my selfishness.
I was stunned. My mother's death was not due to my carelessness, but an unavoidable fate. The door was finally broken down. The priest and townspeople stormed into the house, brandishing torches.
Seize the witch.
Lucy pushed me hard.
Escape through the back.
You too.
I'm tired, she smiled. For 50 years, I've lived in fear of losing those I love. But by loving you, I finally learned that love also means letting go.
Lucy.
Go. And live. For me.
In my confusion, I fled Lucy's house. I felt guilty leaving her behind, but I had no choice but to obey her strong will. Hiding in the bushes on the back hill, I witnessed a terrifying sight. The townspeople surrounded Lucy and began a witch trial.
How many years have you been in this town?
The priest questioned.
Since I was born. But I've only truly lived for the past 3 months.
Lucy's beautiful voice resonated in the night wind. Illuminated by the torchlight, she looked almost like a saint.
There was a young man 50 years ago, too. He met the same fate.
Yes,
Lucy replied calmly.
but this time it's different. This time, I choose.
The crowd murmured.
Is she trying to enchant us with magic? Burn her.
I tried to stand up, but my legs trembled and wouldn't move. The woman I loved was about to be executed, and I could do nothing. As the night deepened, the crowd's angry shouts gradually quieted, and they dispersed, deciding on an execution in the morning. I was alone, shivering in the cold night wind, continuously worrying about her fate. As dawn broke, I spent the night shivering in the bushes on the back hill. As the 8 bell tower chimes echoed through the town, a new fear, different from last night's, dominated the air. In the town square, the excitement of the previous night had given way to cold, grim preparations for an execution. The crowd surrounding Lucy formed an orderly circle, like an ancient ritual.
Witch, give us back our children.
My heart pounded fiercely. The urge to save her conflicted with the fear of knowing the truth. For the past 3 months, I had loved her. However, the sight I witnessed last night, the vanishing children and her expression, told me that something was fundamentally wrong. Mayor Williamson stood before the newly prepared pyre and shouted,
"This woman stole our children. The blood of a witch flows within her."
Lucy stood quietly, her hands bound, but her pale skin still glowed in the morning sun. Her wavy golden hair swayed in the breeze like ocean waves. At that moment, Lucy lifted her face. Her gaze found my hiding place in a direct line. Despite being 200 meters away, I felt her eyes pierce my soul. Her lips moved. Though I couldn't hear her voice, words echoed in my head.
Marcus, it's time to see the truth.
Supernatural manifestations. The moment the townspeople began to throw torches at Lucy, something strange happened. The fire vanished in midair without touching her, as if blocked by an invisible wall, and the ropes binding her crumbled into ash.
"What is this?"
Williamson's voice trembled. Lucy slowly rose. Her feet lifted from the ground, first a few centimeters, then a meter, 2 meters. She was floating in the air.
I am Lucy Whitmore.
Her voice echoed across the square.
I have lived in this town for 50 years. But that is just the beginning. My true name is...
Her appearance began to change. Her pale skin became even more transparent, and the color of her hair changed to a deep blue-green, like seaweed, yet beautiful.
I am an ancient being from this land, a descendant of that bloodline. My true name is Elizabeth Saltworth, born in this town in 1823.
The townspeople recoiled in terror, but for some reason, I understood. Her beauty, her timeless demeanor, and her maternal love for the children. It all connected.
Where are the children?
Someone cried with a trembling voice. Lucy, no. Elizabeth's expression twisted in sadness.
They were never truly real.
My blood ran cold. More than a dozen children, Those innocent smiles, warm embraces. Was it all an illusion?
No,
Elizabeth looked down at us from the air.
they were real. But that was 150 years ago.
She waved her hand, and an image appeared in the square, a sepia-toned scene like an old film. It showed children dressed in 19th century clothing, but their faces were exactly the same as the children I knew: Thomas, Sarah, Emma, and baby James.
In the winter of 1873, a plague struck this town. Many children lost their lives. I wanted to save them. I used the Salt Witch's power to preserve their souls.
In the image, a young Elizabeth, who appeared to be 50 at the time, held the hands of the dying children and a glowing liquid. That's... Words escaped my lips. That medicine?
Yes, Marcus. That medicine is the essence of the children's souls. One drop can anchor their souls to the material world for a month, giving them temporary manifestation. I continue to give it to them little by little every day to keep them alive forever.
The medicine. It was a forbidden power that brought the past into reality at the cost of life. Sobs could be heard from the townspeople. They had been terrified of children who might have been their own ancestors.
But why Marcus?
Williamson asked. Elizabeth's gaze caught mine again.
During the 3 months I was treating his mother, I saw his heart. Pure, gentle, and lonely. Just like I was 150 years ago.
I stood up from the bushes. There was no point in hiding anymore. Now that the truth was revealed, I had to make a decision.
Marcus, run. You're enchanted by the witch.
One of the townspeople shouted, but I started walking towards the square, step by step, steadily. Elizabeth's eyes were fixed on me. I knew that within them, love, regret, and deep loneliness were intertwined. Lucy, I called her false name. No, Elizabeth, tell me the truth. Everything. She slowly descended to the ground. At that moment, her appearance changed again. This time, her true form from 200 years of life. A beautiful yet somehow ancient woman, bearing the weight of time.
Marcus, I have lived for the children. But when I met you, another feeling bloomed. For the first time in 150 years, I remembered what it was like to love as a woman.
Silence fell between us, so profound that even the presence of the townspeople faded. And the raft? I asked.
A toy the children loved 150 years ago. It's returned from the sea at the same time every year to help me recall their memories by contract with the sea spirits.
That raft I had seen since childhood. It was the anchor that bound the souls of the deceased children.
And to make that medicine, I've been depleting my own life force. I don't know how many more years I can live.
Her confession tore at my heart. The woman I loved was actually a supernatural being who had lived for 200 years, sacrificing her own life for deceased children. What is the Salt Witch? I asked the final mystery. Elizabeth smiled sadly.
Those who dwell on the border between sea and land. Their power changes with the tides. They find what is lost, and they bridge the living and the dead. Our bloodline possesses power born from the grief of losing loved ones.
As she held out her hand, salt crystals began to dance in the air. They formed beautiful spirals, shaping into the forms of children. But the price is heavy. Once you use that power, you must give up the happiness of a normal human life. You are destined to walk the boundary forever. The salt children danced around us. Their laughter seemed to blend with the wind, but I couldn't tell if it was an illusion or their real voices.
In 1823, I lost my beloved younger brother to a plague. That sorrow awakened the Salt Witch's blood. For 200 years since then, I have continued to save lost children.
Most of the townspeople had already fled. only a few remaining frozen in terror.
But Marcus, she approached me. The time I spent with you was the most human time for me. Your love revived the woman within me.
I took her hand. At that moment, a jolt like an electric current ran through my entire body. Her memories, 200 years of solitude, and her love for me all flooded into me at once. Children dying from the plague, lives lost one after another, and her desperate prayers. The shock of awakening to the Salt Witch's power. The determination to preserve the souls of the dead children. 150 years of endless solitude. And then, on a spring day 6 years ago, meeting me while I was nursing my mother, Elizabeth. I called her true name. I love you. No matter who you are or what you've done. Tears welled in her eyes. The Salt Witch's tears were as salty as seawater.
But Marcus, if you stay with me, you'll also have to give up a normal life. Marrying, having children, growing old peacefully. That ordinary happiness.
I shook my head. 6 years ago, when I lost my mother, my life was already no longer ordinary. And since I met you, I haven't sought ordinary love. The surrounding salt crystals began to swirl violently. The children's forms gradually faded.
They're disappearing.
Elizabeth whispered.
The medicine's effect is wearing off. And I no longer have the strength to make more.
She swayed. 200 years of depleted life force were reaching their limit. Is there nothing I can do? I asked, supporting her. Elizabeth gazed into my eyes.
There is only one way. But it's
Anything.
to share a portion of your life force with me. That way, the children can be maintained for another 50 years. But your lifespan will be halved.
I answered immediately. I'll do it.
Marcus, do you understand? If you would normally live to 80, you'll die at 40. That's only 10 more years.
She cried. Even if it's a short time, I don't care, I smiled. Time spent with you and the children is more valuable to me than anything. Her expression twisted with love and anguish.
But
Elizabeth, I clasped her hands tightly. Isn't love about sacrificing yourself for the other person? You've done that for the children for 150 years. Now, it's my turn to do it for you and the children. Elizabeth slowly nodded.
understood. But this is an eternal covenant. Even if you regret it later, there's no turning back.
I won't regret it. She placed her hand over mine. At that moment, a vortex of light began to swirl around us. Salt crystals ascended into the air as light, and the children's forms became vivid again. Pain shot through my entire body, a sensation like my soul being torn apart. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of fulfillment. I could feel my life force flowing into Elizabeth and the children. When the light subsided, 12 children stood before us. They were much more materialized than before, as if truly alive.
Papa, Mama, can we go to heaven now?
Thomas asked.
Yes,
Elizabeth replied.
this time as a real family together.
I looked up at the sky. The stars shone beautifully. Perhaps a new home awaited us there. 3 years have passed since then. We live a strange but happy life in the house on the reef. The townspeople were initially afraid, but as Elizabeth saved fishermen during storms and treated sick children, they gradually began to accept her. They started to understand that the Salt, which was not an evil being, but rather a guardian who lived on the border. The children are still innocent and adore me, calling me Papa. The time I spend with them is pure bliss. Thomas likes to ask me to teach him fishing techniques, and Sarah entertains us with her beautiful singing during dinner. Elizabeth has become much more human than before. Perhaps gaining my life force also restored her own humanity. Waking up every morning to the scent of the salty bread she bakes is my greatest happiness,
Marcus,
she murmured one evening, gazing at the sea.
do you have any regrets?
On the contrary, I'm proud of that decision. I put my arm around her shoulder. It's far more meaningful than an ordinary life. However, one day, while I was fishing alone, I had a strange experience. From across the sea, a transparent female figure approached. Her face. It was my mother. She had a desperate look, as if trying to convey something.
Marcus,
My mother's voice mingled with the sound of the waves.
that medicine wasn't truly curing me. It was transferring your life force to me, prolonging my life.
My blood ran cold. What are you saying?
Elizabeth's medicine transfers the life force of the living to the dead. To cure my illness, she was slowly taking from your future lifespan. In 3 months, it was 20 years worth.
My hands began to tremble. Then, I was already.
Yes. You had already lost a considerable amount of your life force in your youth. And with this recent covenant, it's halved again. The time you have left might be far less than I thought.
My mother's form gradually faded.
But, my son, your love is true. That much is certain. Elizabeth and the children love you with all their hearts. Even knowing the truth, cherish that love.
When my mother's figure completely vanished, I stood alone on the sea, bewildered. Returning home, I said nothing to Elizabeth. However, she seemed to notice my change.
Marcus, is something bothering you?
I looked at her, the beautiful Elizabeth, the woman who had endured 200 years of solitude, lived for the children, and loved me. But at the same time, she was also the being who had unknowingly stolen my life, even during my mother's treatment. Elizabeth, I asked quietly, did the medicine you used to treat my mother consume my lifespan? Her face paled. After a long silence, she nodded faintly.
I'm sorry, but there was no other way. I wanted to save your mother, and I was happy to meet you.
How much?
20 years.
Her voice trembled.
But Marcus,
I stood up. I calculated in my head. If I originally had an 80-year lifespan, 20 years were taken for my mother's treatment, and then halved again by this covenant. That left 30 years. No, it might be even less. Fear began to stir within me. The woman I thought I loved was actually a vampire-like being who had been slowly stealing my life. That night, I walked alone along the coast. The moonlight reflected on the waves, creating a fantastical scene. There were two choices. One was to accept this truth and spend my remaining short life with Elizabeth and the children, to choose love. The other was to reject everything and live the rest of my life alone, to choose fear. At my feet, the raft washed ashore, the same small wooden raft from 6 years ago, the anchor that held the children's memories. I picked it up. It was light, warm, and sad. The souls of the children from 150 years ago were contained within this small toy.
Marcus.
I turned around to see Elizabeth standing there, illuminated by the moonlight. She looked as beautiful as a sea goddess.
Do you resent me?
She asked. I thought for a long time, and then I found my answer. I don't resent you. I smiled at her. I'm just afraid. Afraid of dying, of leaving you and the children behind. Elizabeth approached me.
Marcus, what if, together, we could cross that boundary?
What do you mean?
If I use all my remaining power, when your time comes, we can travel to the next world together. With the children. We can be one forever.
I was surprised. Does that mean you'll die too?
Yes. But we'll be together forever.
We gazed at each other. Only the sound of the sea flowed between us. Elizabeth, I took her hand. You fought alone for 200 years. You sacrificed yourself for the children. Now, it's my turn to protect you.
Marcus,
If we truly love each other, death isn't frightening. In fact, being together forever, isn't that the greatest gift? Tears welled in her eyes, salty as the ocean.
truly? You won't regret it?
Never again will I regret anything. We embraced. At that moment, light began to swirl around us. The children appeared, surrounding us. Peaceful smiles graced their faces.
Papa, Mama, can we go to heaven now?
Thomas asked.
Yes,
Elizabeth replied.
this time as a real family together.
I looked up at the sky. The stars shone beautifully. Perhaps a new home awaited us there. This is my story, Marcus Fisher. A strange love story that began 6 years ago with my mother's illness. A romance between an ordinary human and the Salt Witch. Love on the border between life and death. If you can't believe this story, that's fine. But if you ever meet a mysterious woman in a seaside town and she offers you medicine, please think for a moment, what is love? What is sacrifice? And what is eternity? We are about to find those answers, together with those we love, on an eternal journey.